Good afternoon. It's the 6th of December and you're watching Arirang News, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kwon Jang-ho and it's good to have you with us. Reports have emerged that North Korea is continuing to expand its nuclear program. Satellite images show a key long-range missile base has been upgraded despite Kim Jong-un's promises to work towards denuclearization. We'll look further at this potentially concerning development later in the show. But first, for our other headlines of the day, we turn to Devin Whiting at the News Center. Devin?
Jang-ho, indeed, there have been no visible efforts by North Korea recently to abandon its nuclear weapons program, and talks with the U.S. have stalled. Now the United Nations General Assembly has adopted 3 draft resolutions, calling again for North Korea to denuclearize. Kan Hyung-woo reports.
The United Nations General Assembly adopted 63 resolutions and 4 decisions on Wednesday local time in New York, including 3 resolutions that call for North Korea's denuclearization. One of the 3 resolutions, United Action with Renewed Determination Towards the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons, was approved by a vote of 162 in favor to 4 against, with 23 abstentions. The 4 states that voted against the resolution were North Korea, China, Russia, and Syria. The General Assembly also adopted the resolution Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty by a vote of 183 in favor to 1 against, with 4 abstentions. Only North Korea opposed it. Calling for full compliance with the obligation under the resolution, the General Assembly criticized the 6 nuclear tests conducted by Pyongyang since 2006 in violation of related Security Council resolutions. Adopting the resolution towards a nuclear weapon-free world, accelerating the implementation of nuclear disarmament commitments, the Assembly urged nuclear weapon states to fulfill their commitment to reduce and eventually eliminate all types of nuclear weapons. While the US, China, and Russia voted against it, North Korea abstained. The General Assembly added that all states possessing nuclear weapons should decrease the readiness of their nuclear systems in a verifiable and transparent manner. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
Earlier this week, South Korean President Moon Jae-in said that all options are still open when it comes to a possible visit to Seoul by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Media reports have even suggested specific dates for it, pointing to reservations made supposedly by the Blue House at a hotel and a major Seoul landmark. But the Moon administration still says that nothing's been decided and that when and if Kim Jong-un comes is up to him. Lee Ji-won has more.
There aren't yet sufficient signs to say when North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will visit Seoul. South Korea's Prime Minister Incheon said this during his meeting with reporters on Wednesday. The Prime Minister added that a specific time was never fixed and that it was simply hoped that Kim's visit would happen within this year. Kim Jong-un agreed to visit Seoul at an early date at the invitation of President Moon Jae-in during their 3rd Inter-Korean Summit in Pyongyang back in September. Prime Minister Lee said that since all options are open, there will be plans A and B. In fact, a number of dates have been suggested by local media based on reservations made by the Blue House. Some South Korean media have been reporting that a Blue House official had requested that Seoul Tower, a famous tourist destination, not take any reservations on the 13th and 14th of December. When asked about this, officials from Seoul Tower simply said that a group tour has been reserved for the 14th and that the day's reservations are full. It also said that due to privacy issues, the name the reservation was made under cannot be revealed. And according to a hotel industry insider, reservations for suites at the Grand Walker Hill Seoul are unavailable on the 18th to 20th December. The hotel, located east of Seoul, is where the North Korean leader's younger sister Kim Yo-jong stayed during her visit to South Korea in February for the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. The hotel is also far from Seoul city center, making it a better location for the North Korean leader's stay. While the hotel official said that such reports on suite availability are not true, he also said that there were no special signs prior to Kim Yo-jong's visit earlier this year. Many have put more weight on the latter date, as it is right after the anniversary of Kim Jong-un's father Kim Jong-il's death, giving Kim Jong-un less of a burden. But President Moon's senior press secretary Yoon Young-chan said Wednesday that reports on the Blue House offering for Kim Jong-un to visit from the 18th to 20th are not true, and that the North's decision will be important in arranging Kim's visit. 이지원, Arirang News.
A group of South Korean researchers have returned to Seoul after spending almost a week inspecting North Korea's railway network. The goal is to eventually connect it to South Korea's. The researchers say they found that the tracks on the main line along North Korea's western coast have not deteriorated much over the past decade, but they need more time to figure out if they're still usable. Oh Jung-hee has more.
South Korean researchers returned home Wednesday after 6 days with officials from Pyongyang inspecting North Korea's western Gyeongui rail line.
The North Korean side was very cooperative in this round of inspections. We only had 6 days, but we did our best to make it a substantial survey.
Since last Friday, about 30 inspectors each from Seoul and Pyongyang moved together along almost 400 kilometers of North Korean train tracks from the border town of Kaesong up to the northernmost city of Sinuiju. To do that, they linked up 6 train cars from South Korea with 5 from the north. The researchers concentrated mainly on the roadbeds, tunnels, bridges, and the rail operation system. This was the second time researchers from the south have surveyed the North's Western Railway, the first time being 11 years ago.
The tracks have not gotten better or worse since we checked them last time. It seems the climate didn't have much impact.
The team says North Korean trains can move at a speed of only 20 to 60 kilometers an hour and a bit faster on the tracks north of Pyongyang. When asked whether it'll be possible to renovate the tracks or whether they'll need to be replaced, the team explained,
We need to get the experts together for a discussion. Some researchers say we can use the tracks and others say we can't. I think we'll come to a conclusion if we do another survey or a more detailed one.
For now, it's only the inspectors who've come back to Seoul. The South Korean train cars used for the on-ground survey will now be sent to North Korea's eastern city of Wonsan. From there, another round of inspections will begin this Saturday, this time on the eastern Donghae rail line, and a different group of researchers from Seoul will cross the border for that. The overall joint survey is to end on December 17th. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's economy might be undergoing some stress right now, but trade numbers at least are looking good. The Bank of Korea has released its preliminary data on the current account balance for October, and it's a surplus once again. Our Ko Ryun-hee has the details.
Korea's current account recorded a surplus for the 8th month in a row in October, on the back of strong goods exports. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the current account saw a surplus of $9.19 billion in October. The goods account had a surplus of $11 billion, up from $8.6 billion in October last year. The central bank attributed the increase to the high amount of exports of petroleum products. This comes after international oil prices spiked in October. Strong machinery exports, including manufacturing equipment, also contribute to the surplus. Another reason was that there were 5 extra business days in October this year, as the major Korean Chuseok holiday fell in September rather than October. The service account remained in the red, with a deficit of $2.22 billion for the month. However, the deficit narrowed from the same period last year, thanks to an improvement in the travel account, with the number of visitors from China and Japan both increasing on-year in October. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
Planes taking off from South Korea's Incheon International Airport now have a new, faster route to Europe and other parts of the world. In a deal struck earlier this year that takes effect today, South Korea and China agreed to open up a new path through Chinese airspace that bypasses the most crowded areas near Beijing and the Shandong Peninsula. For flights heading to Europe, that congestion had long been the cause of delays. Also, China has increased the number of planes from Incheon that it lets into its airspace from 6 per hour to 10. The Transport Ministry in Seoul says this new arrangement will cut the percentage of Europe-bound flights that are delayed from 12% to 7%. I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines.
North Korea is reportedly still upgrading one of its long-range missile bases. Such activities are said to have been continuing even after the historic summit between the leaders of North Korea and the US in June. Park Hee-jun tells us more.
If confirmed, it's another disappointing finding on North Korea's weapons activities. According to CNN Wednesday, satellite imagery provided by the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey shows North Korea has been expanding a key long-range missile base in Yeongjo-dong. The base is a mountainous region just 20 kilometers south of the North Korea-China border. Experts told CNN that the facility, which has long been familiar to the U.S., is a suitable location to receive the North's newest long-range missiles, including those that can carry nuclear warheads to the U.S. mainland. The images not only reveal significant activity at the base, but also the construction of a new, previously unknown facility just 11 kilometers away from the Yeongjo-dong base. It's unclear whether they are separate sites or whether one is a sub-base to another. The images also suggest North Korea was building a large underground facility in 2017, and the regime continued construction up until this August. That means such activities were continuing even after the first North Korea-US summit in Singapore in June. There, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to work toward the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The newly discovered activities could be an indicator that months of dialogue with the North has done nothing to stop the regime from developing its weapons programs. And that raises questions on the progress being made in pushing Pyongyang toward complete denuclearization and on the need for a second Kim-Trump summit. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Joining us now for further analysis on this story, we have Dr. Ko Myung-hyun from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. It's good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So according to this report, North Korea is continuing to expand its nuclear program despite promises made by Kim Jong-un. I mean, let me get your take on this report. I mean, is this information credible, and are you surprised at all?
Well, first of all, it's probably credible. I mean, I think we have a very strong photographic evidence that North Korea is further expanding its long-range missile launch facilities. But on the other hand, is this really North Korea cheating the United States? I actually beg to disagree on that. It's about, in the sense that the level of dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang hasn't really reached the stage in which the two sides are going to agree to dismantle actual missile facilities. We are well away from that yet. So, but then what concerns me at this point is that the fact that North Korea is still investing in this kind of long-range missile capability, despite the fact that it's actually planning to dismantle them eventually, according to what their leader, Kim Jong-un, has expressed, it's actually quite concerning, because if North Korea is really expecting to dismantle these facilities because they expect to reach some sort of agreement with the United States, then they shouldn't be investing in this kind of stuff. So in that sense, I think North Koreans themselves have a low expectation on meeting reaching an agreement with the United States. So in that sense, it's actually a negative side.
Sure. I mean, it would be a waste of money, especially since they still do have economic concerns that they have right now. I mean, the economic situation isn't great, is it?
Exactly. So, I mean, given the economic situation, they should be putting priority on economic development, and also that's the reason why they are trying to negotiate with the United States. And then, their behavior should be influenced by their expectation. So this kind of behavior shows that their expectation about reaching on a positive agreement with Washington is actually lower than we think.
Well, all this is concerned with the actual negotiations between North Korea and the US, because Kim Jong-un has said they will work towards denuclearization. And so he's possibly going back on his word, it seems. But when previous reports like this have come out, US President Donald Trump has said, actually, we've known about this the whole time. It's nothing of concern. And, this doesn't change anything. Do you think he'll come out with a similar response?
Definitely. I think President Trump is expecting to have another meeting with Kim Jong-un sometime early next year, and he has said that publicly. And he's trying to avoid any sort of a bump along the way before the meeting actually materializes. But I think, though, like for the rest of the administration officials, this sign again points towards the fact that North Korea's expectation, their own expectation about like a dismantlement, is actually not that great. So I think that's going to influence the American administration's position towards negotiating with North Korea for complete denuclearization. So overall, this is not a major negative development, but I would say this is not a good thing for the success of the negotiation.
Well, I guess this just adds more fuel to Trump's critics, who say, that this negotiations aren't going well. I mean, he's going to feel more pressure, isn't he?
Well, I mean, but on the other hand, it's about negotiations. So I mean, so there's the fact that this kind of facilities are not they are yet to be put on the table for discussion. So Trump hasn't really promised anything in exchange for North Korea dismantling any kind of this kind of facilities yet. So in that sense, it's too soon for the critics to jump on President Trump and criticize him for being naive about North Korea. I mean, it could be naive on a lot of different things, but we haven't reached the fundamental stage yet.
Well, I guess it's not all bad news, because although negotiations between North Korea and the US have stalled for a while, there has perhaps been a slight breakthrough, potentially. Reports over the last few days have suggested that the CIA Korea Mission Center chief, Andrew Kim, met with a senior North Korean official at Panmunjom on Monday. Now, it hasn't been officially confirmed, and the reports do vary in detail, but it looks like some sort of meeting might have taken place. I mean, what do we know so far about this?
Well, this is actually supposed to be a secret meeting, so chances that whatever information that comes out about that meeting is not going to be super reliable. But what I can say is that given the circumstances that President Trump wanting to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un early next year, the reason why Andrew Kim, the center chief, came to Korea again is because he wants to actually make progress in terms of a dialogue about arranging that meeting early next year between Kim Jong-un and Trump. So probably the whole meeting was really about finding out whether North Korea is ready for the second summit.
Well, we'll have to see how that develops as well. Let's turn to some of North Korea's other activities as well. I mean, they've been very busy in reaching out diplomatically to other countries. North Korea's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho has been busy with his tour of countries in the last few days, Syria, Vietnam, and also he's now in China, meeting with Beijing officials. I mean, among all this, I mean, first, let's talk about the China-North Korea relationship. Where does that stand right now, especially in light of all this US negotiations as well?
Well, clearly China wants to remain influential in the peninsular affairs, and they want to be perceived to be that way, so by the international media, and the international community. So, more meetings that they have, China has with North Korea, it's good for China. So they definitely welcome these kind of meetings. And on the other hand, China wants to see whether North Korea is going to change its position regarding denuclearization. They want to be informed about the North Korea's next move. So I think China, I don't think China is going to pressure North Korea too much in that regard, but I think China wants to remain around the edges of the negotiation so that it can take the next action depending on the changes in the situation.
And as I said, North Korea's foreign minister has been touring these countries. Also, North Korea's head of state, the nominal head of state, Kim Jong-nam, has also been to Cuba, Venezuela, and Mexico in the last few days. So a lot of countries that these North Korean officials are visiting. Is this out of the norm? And why are they doing this kind of tour?
Also, there are two ways to think about this. One way is that this is a continuation of the diplomatic blitz that North Korea has been conducting ever since they came out from the shadows, so to speak, earlier this year, and reach out to Seoul and Washington for dialogue. So we can say this is an extension of the momentum. But at the same time, we can also read this in a different way, which is the fact that North Korea is visiting the capitals of other countries that are formerly or still allies of North Korea, such as Syria, Venezuela, and Mexico is not in between. So these are the countries that used to be very friendly with North Korea. So we could say that North Korea is preparing for the next year's diplomatic front. I mean, the reason why they are propping, I mean, essentially making sure that their friends remain on their side if the negotiation with United States, doesn't go the way that they expect. So it's possible for North Korea to find out, where their friends and whether the friendship remain as good as ever.
Now, on the other side of the alliance, South Korea and the US have also held a meeting in the last day or so. So South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa is meeting with her US counterpart, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. What do you think will be on their agenda for the meeting?
So I don't think there will be a major surprise in the meeting between Minister Kang and then Secretary Pompeo. Minister Kang is in Washington not for a high-level discussion or like a critical discussion about the negotiation. She's there to pay condolences over the passing of the former President George W.H. Bush. That's the main purpose, actually a protocol purpose that she's there. But then I think she's meeting with Secretary Pompeo to discuss, basically to be on the same page regarding the negotiation with North Korea, as well as the working of the US ROK working group regarding the sanctions.
Let's move on to another potential development that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Rumors continue to circulate that Kim Jong-un will be coming to Seoul before the end of the year. Seoul has officially, they've denied that there's anything confirmed. They've said, they've stressed, for example, Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon on Wednesday said there was no sufficient signs yet on either side that this visit would happen. But still, the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Do you think that Kim Jong-un really could visit Seoul before the end of the year? And if not, then why do you think all these rumors are circulating?
Well, clearly, there's always a chance that he might come down south from Pyongyang, after all, it's not that far from here. So it's clearly a possibility, but I would take Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon's word at the face value. Nothing is confirmed yet. So, but then on the other hand, we still keep, as you have pointed out, we keep hearing about the potential like a scenario about in which Kim Jong-un will visit sometime next week or a week after that. So in order to make a prediction about it, actually we have to look at the preponderance of evidence for his visit and against his visit. At least from my point of view and personal subjective point of view, the weight of the evidence points against his visit within this year. The reason is because, first of all, if that's really the case that he wants to come to Korea before the end of the year, North Korea would have sent a previous delegation to make sure that the security is okay and all the ceremonies and all that have been arranged. We haven't heard anything about the delegation from North Korea coming to Seoul to make such arrangements. That's one reason. And another reason is, I'm actually skeptical about the meeting taking place right now before the US DPRK meeting. Because US DPRK meeting, which is supposed to take place next year, it's going to be more important to determine the agenda for the Kim-Moon summit. So without US DPRK summit being clear whether it's going to take place, when or where, there's not much of a gain for Kim Jong-un to come to Seoul and then have a meeting with President Moon.
So unlikely for now, but we'll have to keep a look on that. Final topic before we go as well. South Korea's inspectors went to North Korea over the last week to inspect North Korea's railway lines, specifically the Western Gyeonggi line. A different group will be going back again to inspect the Eastern Donghae line as well. But they've come back and they've concluded anyway, the first group has, and said the railways look good and they haven't changed much over the last 10 years. What is your takeaway so far of these railway inspections and what can we see ahead?
Well, clearly North Korea needs a major infusion of capital to prop up its dilapidated infrastructure, and especially in transportation. North Korea relies on trains or railroad for 90% of its cargo transportation as well as passenger transportation. So it's very important for them to receive some sort of a new investment to repair and possibly rebuild their railway infrastructure. And that's the reason why South Korea sent the fact-finding team right now, and which came back. But then what they have found is actually not that surprising. I mean, North Korea, it's been 10 years since last such a fact-finding mission took place from South Korea. And the fact that they haven't really found a major deterioration, it's not surprising because it actually has crumbled already. So I would say that, this is a very important mission because that's going to give us the numbers that we need, such as the amount of capital we need to repair and bring up the standards in North Korea railway to the same as like South Korea or elsewhere in the world.
Of course, and they also have the groundbreaking ceremony, which is set to take place before the end of the year. We'll have to see how that turns out as well. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thank you for coming on the show, as always.
My pleasure.
And that's where we will close out our show. We do hope you can join us again next time. In the meantime, you can catch up on all of our latest content online at arirang.com, as well as the usual social media platforms. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.